How's it going, guys? My name's Nick. I'm back here at NT Performance Engines with my friend Matt Trevina, and we're going to be taking a closer look at this huge RB setup. Okay, so I'm back here at NT Performance Engines, and we're just doing a video on his 800 horsepower setup, his 4 AGE, and there's always this crazy RB26 just lurking around in the background, and I'm always looking at it. We've always spoken about it, and we've always talked about doing a video, and today's the day. So yeah, so tell us a little bit about this crazy setup, man.
Yeah, right. So I guess we'll just start. The customer came to me and basically wanted to build a non-GTR, like a 34 GTT. They quickly realized that he was wasting his time and said, what am I doing? Let's go all-wheel drive, and we'll go to GTR frame. So he went and bought himself an R32 GTR, and the car already ran a 1070 on at the track. So it was a pretty fast car already. And the problem was when I took it for a spin with him and it started tracking all over the place. I said, mate, the suspension's got to go, it's terrible. So we replaced out everything from top to bottom in the suspension, front to back, shockworks, GK Tech arms. We went with all sorts of new components, brakes, discs, like everything. We got the car to go dead true, and then basically we said, let's go look at driveline now. So we talked about gearbox. We went with the Samsonite 6-speed, so it's got a Samsonite sequential in it. And the last piece of the puzzle was axles, diff, and engine package. So we went overseas to America and got drive shaft billet axles. We got a pretty cool diff setup in the rear. I won't talk about that yet until we've got some more to show. But the diff setup in the rear is pretty cool. Front diff, we went with a Quaife diff center. So mechanical LSD, Quaife center, and then my isotopic polished gears. I do that with all my crankshafts and stuff you would have seen in other videos. So we polished the gears and rebuilt the whole diff for the front. It's a bit messy at the moment, but that's because we're nowhere near putting this motor together just yet. Yeah. But yeah, so it's a pretty intense setup. So the idea with the car is we're going to go for the manual record on the cast iron block. The record keeps changing at the moment, but it's low 8s at the moment, I believe. So we went with a Nissan Stagea block. So it's an RB25 Nissan Stagea block. There's one reason we went with this platform is because the car currently has an RB26 in it. RB26s have 12mm head studs. The Stageas don't, because it's an RB25. So this is an RB25 all-wheel drive Stagea block. We had this laying around, so we decided that we're going to put a Nitto stroker kit in it. So this is a 2.8 Nitto stroker kit now. The stroker kit's obviously not in the block, but it's getting fitted. This one's been 3/4 concrete filled, and particularly with this motor, because it doesn't have the 12mm head studs, we can 1/2 inch it. So this has now 1/2 inch head studs. So we've drilled and tapped this block to 1/2 inch. As you can see, there's a receiver groove in here for the firing system that I've explained in other videos, but this is a copper head gasket with a firing system and 1/2 inch concreted block. Outside of that, if I roll this over.
I've got a quick question while we're on the subject.
Yeah.
I've had a few people ask me, with the concrete in the block, what kind of concrete do you use? And like, you know, I think you've told us that you put a bit of resin on the top just to seal it as well. That
was just my particular engine that done the resin, and that's because the concrete, I got my mix a little bit wrong and wasn't happy with it. So it had like this dry film over the top of it, and I cleaned it. I wasn't too happy with it, so I sealed it in with a bit of resin over the top. But there's a few brands out on the market, and everyone's got their own opinion on everything. I use a Moroso brand hard block. That's the chemical I use. There's a couple of other brands out there. I've used them all. If you're gonna concrete a block, Moroso hard block. It's the only one to use. And I'll just state the obvious here. If you're gonna concrete a block, you do that before you machine the block, because 100%. It will change the type. That's right. So when you pour the concrete into the water jackets, as the concrete dries, it changes your shape. You can easily check that. If you measure your bores before you start, concrete it, measure your bores again, you'll be pleasantly surprised that they've gone well out of shape. So do that first. The longer you let the blocks sit and cure, the better the result. I think a full cure time, I think it's about 7 days. So make sure you plan ahead. Chemical clean the block, replace your Welsh plugs, and then concrete the block, because once you've replaced them, once you concrete it, you cannot replace Welsh plugs because they're submersed in concrete. So there's no hope of getting them out or getting them back in. And if the concrete has any sort of porosity through it and liquid's able to get through, they'll leak. So Welsh plugs, chemical clean, concrete, then machine. So yeah, so here we're using a Platinum Racing Products girdle. They've been doing girdles for these GTR sump adapters. This is a strengthening girdle. So this basically just holds the block from twisting. The RBs have a problem in the cast blocks where they actually twist and it cracks them up through oil galleries and whatnot through the sides. So we've gone with the Platinum Racing Products girdle. There's quite a bit of machining involved to get this thing on. Same with the girdle that we would have done on your 7A, Nick. Yeah. So I run them with clearance between the girdle and the actual sump rails. So I make sure that there is a bit of clearance so that actually when you do bolt the outside of the sump down here, it actually pulls the girdle out of shape in the center. So this is bolted, as if you would know, an RB, there isn't individual main caps, they're all one piece as a girdle, or you'd call it a girdle, I guess. And then this is a block brace girdle that goes over the top. So you've got two girdles essentially. Yep. But what I do is I machine the girdle to fit, and I give clearance under the sides. Then when I bolt the sides down, I only give it a slight amount of clearance between the sump rails and the actual girdle. Those specs I'll keep secret, but put it this way, there's not a lot of space in there, but there's something. And you clamp that down, then you can correct your tunnels for tunnel alignment. We also go to a 7/16 main stud on the mains. Yeah, so from a 10mm up to a 7/16 ARP. And then one feature, if you know RBs quite well, is the only blocks to have this are a GTR block. So this is called an annular groove. You actually machine this groove into the main here because the GTR bearings actually have multiple holes for feeding the main tunnel. So you machine this annular groove and you run a GTR bearing in it. So we're going to be running GTR main bearings on this and a wide width big end bearing on the crankshaft. So
pretty much the RB25 engine is the same, but by the time you've machined out the studs for the head, and also done that groove, it's pretty much, and have the girdle and everything, and yeah, it's pretty much the same as an RB26.
The bore is identical, so it's an 86mm bore from factory, between RB26 and 25. So the bore doesn't change. This is only 1/2 mil oversize. I try and keep as much material in the block as I can, and the minimum size that you need to go up to on this block to get the rod in through the bore is 86.5. If you are any smaller than that, your rod will not physically go down the bore. So I use a Nitto rod, Nitto crank, Nitto rod, Nitto piston combo, and the Nitto rods are quite massive. They're massive, so they won't go down a bore unless it's 86.5. So we go to the first size, and that keeps enough metal in the block to keep them strong. And obviously combined with the concrete and stuff, it keeps them pretty tough. So yeah, it's pretty simple. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there building these sorts of setups, but yeah, they try and keep everything sort of hush hush. There's nothing really here that's any sort of a secret, I guess. It's all pretty straightforward. 2.8 litre stroker. And then the fact that it's an RB25, it's literally because we had it sitting around, and we're going to be pulling the engine that's in the car out of it for this one. That engine will get torn down, and we'll be building a billet 3.2 litre block for when this wins the record in the class that we're looking for. So this will be a cast iron block, manual class. So and under 3 litre, so 2.8.
Yeah, right.
So I'm sure there's a record there somewhere for it in this GTR scene. There seems to be a record for absolutely every different combination you can run. So yeah, we'll just look at a couple of them and just see what we can do with this engine package, and then we'll go from there. Cool. But so yeah, if we move across to the cylinder head, RB26 cylinder head. This is one of my CNC packages. So CNC port program, oversized valve. So quite a substantial port on them. CNC chambers. So these are all being CNC'd out for a hemispherical dome. The GTR motors seem to love the hemispherical dome. They seem to enjoy it.
You're saying the exhaust valves are the shiny?
Yeah, so Supertech Inconel exhaust valves and Supertech inlet as well. So this cylinder head we're running a factory seat in. the next motor that we build, the 3.2 billet, that will be getting beryllium copper seats and titanium Victory valves, all custom. So completely shimless. So I have a solid bucket under here. I've just got my clearances. Oh, don't show those are secret. Oh no. So yeah, we've got a solid bucket in here. There's no shim there, and they'll be mated to a pair of GSC Power Division cams. So haven't tried these yet, but I've been seeing a lot of good things about them, so I thought I'd give them a go. Normally I use Kelford. These are an all billet camshaft from the US, so thought I'd give them a go. And this is the package that we've come up with. So we're hoping to look to make around 1300 horsepower on the setup at the rears, but we'll just see what happens because we haven't purchased a turbo yet. We're sort of waiting for the latest and greatest turbo tech to come out. This car's been built for the last year and a half now, so turbo is probably the last thing we're going to buy because the turbo technology, it changes pretty rapidly. It's probably looking to go big precision, probably a Pro Mod style precision, so there's still a lot more to do in the car, but yeah, the engine mechanical side of things doesn't really change. Like you know, a new brand of rod comes out or a new type of piston, but it doesn't really change the overall result of the engine package. So we've gone with the package that I know works because I've built plenty of these motors in the past. So yeah, we're just going to roll with this one for the moment. Yeah. Go from there.
Beautiful. So can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah, different.
It's something that I know about, and I actually got a bit of a kick out of it when I spoke to you about it.
Yep.
Was you just briefly mentioned beryllium copper seats?
Yep.
So obviously beryllium copper is like a pretty exotic option for a cylinder.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I remember you were explaining how it has impact resistant and it hardens on the outside.
Yeah, so you would have seen it if you actually look on like Instagram, look at 4 Piston Racing in the US. They have plenty of photos of their absolutely insane K-Series engines. They've got an aspirated K-Series, which is 2.7 litres, I think, making 500 horsepower aspirated. Unbelievable. Yep. That they have a lot of photos of their beryllium copper inserts, and what it is at some point the nickel seats in these are so hard that when the valve slams shut against it will actually bounce off the surface and causing valve float. So at high RPM and high boost levels, when you've got obviously in other videos I've explained this, but if you've got, say, on the intake side, say you've got 80 psi of air pressure coming in this side boost, and then you've only got a 90 pounds seated spring pressure, means you've only got 10 pounds of effective spring pressure here on the valve. So at 10 pounds, it's very easy for the valve to slam shut and bounce off the surface. So you effectively lose all valve control. That's where you can bend valves. You can't get control of your cylinder pressure, and the motor will fall over in horsepower. You'll actually see the horsepower just come up and dive over. That can be due to lack of spring pressure or the fact that the valves are bouncing off the seat. So let's just say you have a softer seat, beryllium copper. Beryllium copper acts as like a sponge. When the valve shuts against it really hard, it won't bounce off it. It will sort of just absorb the impact of the close, allowing you to effectively run less spring pressure, which is less parasitic loss that the engine actually has to drive the valve spring. So if you've got, you know, let's just say we have 100 pounds on each seat in each valve, at any point in time as the engine rotates over, you've got 200 pounds of actual pressure on one cam just to turn it. So the engine requires a lot of torque just to turn the cams over. So the best thing you can do is try and minimize the amount of valve spring pressure you have for the effective power you want to make. So I know that this car is probably going to run in the vicinity of 60 pounds of boost pressure, 60 to 70 pounds. So I've gone with a spring that's about 110 pounds. Means I have a fair bit of leeway there for RPM, because obviously the higher you go in RPM, the more chance you have of valve float. A beryllium copper seat is going to help me control that valve action. The other thing too is a titanium valve. It's a lightweight valve. The physical mass of the valve also contributes to that. So the lighter you can make your valve train, the more it helps. I might be able to take some spring pressure out of it and then gain some torque out of the fact that I don't need to run such heavy springs. Not to mention it also creates havoc on your buckets. These are then a consumable. They start to flatten out and get damaged, and it starts wearing off the cam lobes. So you want to try and reduce the amount of waste you have in your engine. One of the things you can do is spend a little bit more early on and go for the better quality parts, and you might save yourself a fair bit of money later on. Last thing you want to do is drop a valve into an engine. It's catastrophic.
That's right, yeah. So yeah. The beryllium copper seats, although they have that shock absorption ability and they're like kind of softer, the contact surface actually hardens. So
beryllium copper is a funny thing. The more you pound it, it work hardens the surface. So it absorbs the impact and then hardens. So it almost sounds contradictory in how the metal actually works, because you would think that for it to be tough, it needs to be like brittle or hard. But for some reason, beryllium copper, I'm not a metallurgist, I don't know all the answers, but I do know that you know, that's where the development's taken everyone. The beryllium copper seems to work really well. So beryllium copper seats work really well with titanium valves. Not to mention, once you go to a titanium valve, if you keep a nickel seat, in a lot of cases, the titanium valve can actually, when the valve shuts against the seat, the nickel seat can actually pick off material from the valve. So you'll actually get pitting on your valves because it actually leaves metal behind on the nickel seat. Beryllium copper won't do that. Dissimilar metals and metallurgy and all that sort of stuff. Again, I'm not an expert on it, but I just know the setup that works.
Yeah, it's very cool stuff, man.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that'll be it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. And here's a little preview of next week's video, where we do an update on Matt's 400 horsepower setup in his KE70. And we also take a look at a customer's stunning AE86 that Matt was doing a EFI conversion on. If you like this video, let me know what you think in the comments. And while you're there, don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks, guys.
Sounds tough, man.